As of April this year, under the new Control of Agricultural Pollution regulations, there is now a requirement for farmers to undertake a basic risk assessment ahead of any operation spreading nitrogen fertiliser or manures that contain nitrogen. Another rule that came in from April 2021 is that now there are closed periods in place for the spreading of manufactured nitrogen fertilisers. There's also a regulation that's come into force now that if you are applying high nitrogen manures, so slurry, poultry manure, pig manure, if you're applying those to bare soil, stubbles, then you need to incorporate that within 24 hours. So basically, before you go out and spread anything, you need to go and do a basic field assessment to make sure that the conditions are suitable, that we're not going to risk either loss of that nitrogen into the river or the atmosphere, or damage to soil. So your risk assessment should A, start with a weather forecast. What's it doing now? What's the forecast for the next 48 hours? You know, I'm stood on a floodplain. I really want to know the forecast for the next 2 or 3 days because we don't want the river coming up and taking stuff away. Second one, ground conditions. So all the rules apply about not spreading when ground is waterlogged, when it's frozen, snow covered. So it's about making these decisions. Is it good conditions to spread or should we delay? So another big criteria will be slopes. So they give us a higher risk of movement. The other criteria will be compacted soils. Just have a look and see what the surface conditions like and does it give me a stronger risk of slurry moving off the top. Currently there's no paperwork requirement, there's no form to fill in your risk assessment, but your risk assessment needs to be done before you spread. So it's just about covering your back and making sure conditions are spot on so we can eliminate wastage. You are no longer allowed to spread between the 15th of September and the 15th of January on grassland and the 1st of September to the 15th of January on tillage land. There are exemptions. Grassland is a crop with an exemption, and if you can justify demand, you are allowed to continue to apply 2 small applications up until the 31st of October. There are exemptions for some of the salad crops as well, and winter oilseed rape. All other crops you will need to seek advice from a FACTS qualified person before you apply any fertiliser in those closed periods.
The Control of Pollution regulations were brought in on the 1st of April 21. The construction standards for all structures to be built, slurry stores, silage clamps, muck stores, are also applicable. The standards haven't changed since the original SAFO regulations which were brought in 30 years ago. All structures need to be built to BS 5502, which is the required structural standard for the structure. NRW need to be informed 14 days before construction starts on site. This is the only difference from the previous regulations. A pre-construction notice needs to be supplied to NRW and a WQE4 form signed off once the structure is finished. Planning permission will be required on more structures, so that needs to be checked with the local authority. Exempt structures, those built before 1991, are still able to be used as long as they do not pose a pollution risk. The only structures that are currently within the new regulations are silage clamps. The reason for the silage clamps being included are the regulations are exactly the same as they were in the previous SAFO regulation, so there's no change. New clamps must have an impermeable floor, normally concrete or can be asphalt. Boundary channels are a requirement around the exterior perimeter of the clamp. The channel then needs to be linked either to an effluent tank or to the slurry storage system. The slurry store must have the capacity to hold 5 months surface rainfall off the clamp if it's an open facility. Earth bank clamps built after 1991 are non-compliant, and you cannot build an earth bank clamp under the new regulations. Wrapped silage bales are still permissible under the new regulations. However, wrap bales have to be stored on a hard standing, which has to be more than 10 metres from a ditch or a watercourse, or 50 metres away from a borehole or a drinking water source. If you have an old earth bank clamp that you think is non-compliant, you could store the rat bales in that earth bank clamp, and that would be legal and compliant with the new regulations.
To help you with the new raft of regulations, there's a heap of advice on the Farmer Connect website. There's also a dedicated phone line that ADAS run where you can seek advice, and there's also a lot of information on the Welsh Government website in terms of details of the individual regulations.